Uh, Good afternoon, friends. I am Dr. Avinash.R. I am a consultant pulmonologist at Apollo BJS Hospital, Mysore. Today, we'll be talking with regards to World No Tobacco Day. World No Tobacco Day is being held every year on May 31st by WHO. The basic incentive of holding a World No Tobacco Day is to raise an awareness with regards to tobacco consumption and its ill effects. This year, World Tobacco Day is being held on 31st of May, and this year's theme is Tobacco Consumption Poisoning Our Planet. Tobacco is killing us and the planet. Here, what we are trying to highlight is tobacco consumption not only affects us as an individual, it is also polluting the planet, it is also poisoning the planet. If I have to give you a perspective as such, the ill effects of tobacco starts right from the part of its cultivation, its curing, its processing of tobacco leaves, manufacturing of different tobacco products including smokeless and smoked tobacco products, its use and even its disposal. If I have to give you some statistics, I can actually end up telling that 5% of the world's deforestation happens because of the tobacco industry. One tree helps to produce somewhere around 300 cigarettes, and 1 kg of tobacco consumption utilizes enough water that can satisfy a single person's water use for 1 whole year. And one butt of cigarette, a single cigarette, uses around 3.7 liters of water during its whole cycle. The harms of tobacco doesn't start when it is being used. The harms of tobacco starts with the farmers who are cultivating it, in whom almost 25% of the farmers have something called as green tobacco sickness because of nicotine poisoning that happens in them. So tobacco causes a lot of harm and a lot of damage to the planet. Even the butt of tobacco, when it is being disposed, it causes marine pollution, and also waste management or changes that happens because of tobacco can also be there. So other than that, what are the different types of tobacco consumption? Tobacco consumption is basically of two types. One is smokeless tobacco and second is smoking tobacco. So smokeless tobacco is whatever they end up using, gutka, snuff and dissolvable tobacco, which is the major form of tobacco that is being used in our country. And smoking tobacco is in the form of cigarette, BDs, cigars and other things that is also being consumed. In India, BDs is more compared to cigarettes. So tobacco consumption, or if you are smoking, basically smoking tobacco, the harm can be because of two things. One is first-hand smoke. When the person actually smokes the cigarette, he ends up consuming whatever is there in the cigarette, it goes into the lungs and he exhales it out. The effect that is caused to the person who is smoking is called as first-hand smoke. Second-hand smoke is the smoke that comes out of the fire end of the cigarette, or the end where you have put the fire. That part of the cigarette, and whatever is being exhaled by the person, if it is inhaled by some other person, it is called second-hand smoke. Both are harmful. Smokeless tobacco and smoking tobacco both are harmful. First-hand smoke and second-hand smoke both are harmful. If I have to give you some statistics, there are 8 million deaths that happens because of tobacco consumption or cigarette consumption every year throughout the world, and out of which 1.2 million deaths is because of second-hand smoke. In India, the number is around 1.2 million people die out of the 8 million people worldwide every year because of tobacco. And the tobacco, whatever cigarette is there, it has somewhere around 7,000 chemicals, and 70 of which are carcinogenic. It is there even in the smokeless tobacco also. And 90% of all oral cancers is because of tobacco consumption, that is smokeless tobacco in the form of gutka or snuff, and 27% of all cancers is because of tobacco. And how does tobacco harm us? Tobacco causes cancers and it causes chronic diseases. Cancers, it can start right from the oral cavity in the form of gums, your oral cavity cancers, your laryngeal cancers, your lung cancers, stomach cancers. It causes cancers of your urinary bladder, it causes cancers of your kidney, pancreas and even the cervix. And if in the form of chronic diseases, it can start right from the mouth. It causes some amount of oral hygiene loss, some amount of mouth ulcerations. It can cause a change of hoarseness in voice. It can lead to lung issues in the form of COPD. It reduces your lungs immunity also and leads to recurrent pneumonias. COPD basically means your airways becomes narrow. You'll end up having difficulty in breathing, wheezing, sort of sounds while breathing, chronic cough, and other things may be there. And it also causes pneumonia because it reduces the immunity of the lungs as such. And whenever an exposure to a virus, bacteria, or anything happens, it can cause lung infections too. And other than that, it also causes hardening of all your blood vessels. Because of hardening of the blood vessels, and because of the hardening, there will be narrowing of the blood vessels. This is called as peripheral vascular disease. This peripheral vascular disease causes a reduced blood supply in your extremities. Extremities is your hand, fingertips, and toes. So because of that one, because of the reduced blood supply, they might be dry gangrene of those places also. And because of the hardening of the blood vessels, because of the plaques that are being formed, it also affects the heart. It causes something called as myocardial infarction or heart attacks, and it can also cause strokes. If a person who is pregnant consumes tobacco, either in the form of first hand smoke or second hand smoke, it can cause a lot of growth retardations in the kid, to be born kid. It can cause abnormalities or congenital anomalies even in the newborn kid, and it can even lead to abortion. So you already got to know that these are the ill effects of tobacco consumption. These are the ill effects of the tobacco industry per se. So right now the power lies in the hand of the consumer. If they stop consuming it, if they kick the butt, then I think so the production will also stop and we can restore our environment also. So the whole process of stopping to use tobacco is called as tobacco cessation. And tobacco cessation, the first and most important part that a person should have is a very, very strong willpower. If the person has a very strong willpower, he can leave tobacco at once. That is called cold turkey sort of a thing. If a person is not able to do that, then I think so we can help you in order to stop usage of tobacco. And these are in the form of tobacco cessation clinics. In tobacco cessation clinics, basically what we do is we try to assess your tobacco addiction, how much you are addicted, what are the ill effects that are being caused due to tobacco, educate you with regards to how to stop tobacco consumption, and also try to intervene in the form of nicotine patches or nicotine replacement therapy, some amount of pharmacotherapy in the form of varenicline and other drugs, and in the form of social support groups who will constantly keep motivating you in order to stop tobacco consumption, and also in the form of telecommunication and other things which will help tobacco consumption to be stopped. There is a saying that a cigarette is a tobacco that is rolled in a piece of paper with fire at one end and a fool at the other. Let us not be the fools who end up consuming tobacco. Let us not be the fools in whom the tobacco consumes us. Thank you. The session is open for questions. Till I end up getting some questions, I'll just be speaking with regards to what ill effects that it causes to the lungs and how it is very important during this pandemic as such. See, the whole COVID scenario and other things taught us that our health is the most important priority. There are a number of factors which causes your health to be damaged. Some of it are in our hands, some of it is are inevitable. Like the coronavirus, it was inevitable, it ended up coming, it ended up affecting everyone. So there are a few things which is in our hands. That is pollution, our body habits, our body habitus, and what we are and our lifestyle per se. So in this, cigarette or tobacco consumption is one important thing that is in our hands. If we try to not use it, stop using it, and practice healthy lifestyles, I think so it will help us in a long way to maintain our health, so that these unavoidable causes, whenever they come, we should not have that much of ill effects because of that. So received a question with regards to how does it affect to the lungs as such. See, basically what happens is, because of smoking or tobacco consumption, one thing in the lung that happens is called as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. So COPD basically tells us that the airways becomes a little narrow, and because since the airways is narrow, air is not able to go in or air is not able to come out. So air is needed, basically oxygen is needed for our body to proceed normally or function normally. When the airways are narrow, what happens is, when the air is not able to go in, it causes a reduction in the oxygen supply to the body. Once that happens, a person has unusual tiredness, breathing difficulty, especially on exertion or walking or climbing upstairs or walking on uphill and other things. And other than that, whenever there is a small airway and air is going in, it causes these sort of things. Our second important thing that happens is, the secretions, whatever is there in the lungs, is not able to come out. So when it is not able to come out, it causes some amount of irritation there, and it causes cough. The cough can be productive or non-productive, and usually it is productive. So this is called a COPD. And second important thing is, constant consumption of smoke or smoking particles which goes into the lungs causes our body immunity or the local immunity to be on the overdrive as such. Whenever that happens, our local immunity is also lost, our systemic immunity also comes down. When that happens, a person who smokes cigarette or consumes tobacco regularly will have something called as recurrent pneumonias or recurrent infections. And your COPD can have two things. One is chronic bronchitis, where cough is predominant and productive cough is predominant, or an emphysema, where usually our breathing issues are predominant. But both are treatable. First important thing will be to quit smoking. Second is to have your evaluation done in the form of a PFT or an X-ray. And third is start using inhalers on a regular basis and keep your lifestyle a little healthy. I got one more question with regards to how a nicotine replacement helps in tobacco cessation. See, basically the whole point is, your tobacco is useful. Tobacco, it induces something called as nicotine in the body, and this nicotine itself causes the high that is usually associated with the tobacco, and it is also responsible for the addiction that happens because of the tobacco. So because of the nicotine, what happens is, it goes to the brain and gets attached to something called as dopamine receptors and causes release of dopamine. So this dopamine in turn gives you the high that happens because of tobacco. But because of the constant usage of tobacco, the receptors becomes insensitive. That is, higher levels of nicotine is needed to give the same amount of pleasure. So because of this, there is a constant cycle of overusing the tobacco, and underwhelming happiness that happens because of that. And this becomes a vicious cycle. And the more the tobacco is consumed, the more body harm happens, but at the same time, the lesser reward it happens in the brain. So this causes a cycle of addiction. In order to break this, first and foremost, a will to leave tobacco is important. And second thing is, in people who are having difficulty to leave or who are having withdrawal symptoms, usage of nicotine in the form of patches, gums, lozenges, and other things will be beneficial in order to maintain some constant level of nicotine so that you don't stop it abruptly, so that a person who has quit smoking continues to quit smoking for a longer period of time. So that is why nicotine replacement becomes important. I thank you one and all for the attention, and thank you for the opportunity that is provided as such. And I hope my talk was useful. Even if a few people quit tobacco consumption because of this, this is worth the talk.